we probably want to talk a little bit about why we're having this conversation, right? And that we have a lot of customers that we're working with that are trying to choose between Okta and Azure AD, or have gone down a path without maybe realizing what all their options were, and not realizing that these two products, Okta and Azure AD, really mirror each other in a lot of ways and have a lot of similarities. And then that would lead into what the what are those similarities, and then what are the differences, and how we can help.
Yeah, we get a lot of customers that come to us and they tell us, "Hey, we're looking at getting Okta," and we say, "Why?" And they say, "Well, we want to do single sign-on for our applications." And then we look at them and say, "Well, you already have Microsoft 365, so that means you have Azure AD, which does the same stuff as Okta. So there's really no need to double pay on that." So yeah, that's another kind of historical reason why we're talking about this now, is because it's come up a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Is it truly apples to apples? Is Okta the same thing as Azure AD?
I think really seeing the breadth of the similarities really drives it home, that all the features, pretty much all of the features in Okta have identical features in Azure AD. So just going through all the different features of Okta. So Okta has an Active Directory agent that you use to sync between Okta and Azure AD. Azure AD has Azure AD Connect, which is near identical. The setup and installation and functionality, admin experience, what they do is near identical between those two things.
That's the tool that goes on the server that syncs the domain controller with the cloud.
Yep, absolutely. So it takes all the users and groups and passwords from your on-premises traditional Active Directory environment and copies them over to Azure AD or to Okta via basically the same mechanism. So there's Okta Desktop SSO. This is what gets you single sign-on from your Windows domain joined computers. So if you're on a Windows computer joined to your domain, you don't need to enter your username and password at all to sign into Okta. It does it seamlessly. Azure AD has Azure AD Seamless SSO, where it works identical. In the background, they work exactly the same. There's no difference there.
I like this feature because when I sign into my Windows PC and I open a browser, all the things tied to my Azure AD account are just automatic. So it's real convenient as far as using it as an end user.
Yep, absolutely. And then there's a feature called Okta Delegated Auth, which does real-time authentication against Active Directory. Azure AD has Azure AD Passthrough authentication. Exact same functionality, exact same feature. The SSO applications, like you talked about before, that's one of the driving things. A lot of people go to Okta so they can integrate their sign-in with a lot of different third-party SaaS applications. So you can sign into Salesforce and Dropbox and all these other things using a single set of credentials. Azure AD obviously has the same functionality there. So both Okta and Azure AD can integrate with third-party apps using SAML, OpenID Connect, WS Federation, Radius using an on-prem agent, and they can also use SCIM protocol for provisioning into third-party apps. So these are all open standards for integration between apps, and Okta has all of the same features of Azure AD. So they can both integrate with all the same apps. There's really no application out there that can be integrated with Okta that can't be integrated with Azure AD. Any app you have, if it can be integrated with one, it can be integrated with the other.
I have a question on that. So I've seen a lot of customers that pick Okta. They love having that portal where a user can log in and see all the little app icons like an iPad. Does Azure AD have that as well?
Absolutely. Yep. The My Apps portal. So if you're going into the regular Office 365 portal, you can see all your apps from there, or there is a dedicated My Apps portal, myapps.microsoft.com, that you can go to, which will list all of your apps in the tile view, very similar to what you see with Okta. So then to move on, there's Okta Secure Web Authentication, or SWA, SWA, that we hear a lot of customers talking about, which basically what it does is if you have a website that doesn't support those different protocols for integrating SSO apps, it basically uses a browser extension to store your password and then automatically fill the password for you. Azure AD has a similar feature called Azure AD Password-based SSO. So they both work exactly the same, very similar setup, very similar functionality. So then there's Okta Verify, which is the actual mobile app that you install on your mobile device to authenticate with Okta with MFA. Microsoft has Azure Authenticator, near identical apps. They really look the same. They function the same enrollment and setup process, same usage. Really very little differences between the two.
I have a question on the Azure Authenticator with the MFA. I've heard the question asked, can that be extended to on-prem as well? So I know out of the box, you can MFA with your Office 365, but what about back down to an on-prem app?
Yep, absolutely. So there's several different ways to integrate on-prem apps depending on what the app is, what type of app is. A really common one is to integrate MFA with your VPN, so that users have to use MFA to remotely connect into your network via VPN. That can absolutely be done with Azure MFA, usually with the Radius extension, and it's again same setup and integration as it would be with Okta. So then there's also Okta FastPass, which is a way to sign in with just the phone notification and not having to type in a password at all. Azure AD has passwordless authentication. They do exactly the same thing, same setup, the same way they work, so you can sign in without a password. There's Okta Adaptive Authentication, which lets you set up different rules and policies for when you want to allow or deny authentication or when you want to enforce MFA. So you can set up different rules based on the user's location or IP address. Microsoft has the same thing with Azure AD Conditional Access, where it works very similarly. Then there's Okta Access Gateway, same thing as Azure AD Application Proxy. That's another way to integrate MFA and SSO with legacy on-premises applications that don't support the newer SSO protocols like SAML. You can use Azure AD Application Proxy or Okta Access Gateway to publish those applications, make them available over the internet without a VPN connection, secure them very well with MFA and conditional access policies. So those products work basically the same, really exactly the same between Okta and Azure AD. Then there's a tool called Okta Advanced Server Access, and again, Azure AD has replacements for that, or that tool's for about securing RDP and SSH access for administrators into servers. There are several ways to do that with Azure AD. And then obviously both have robust logging capabilities where you can access and view your sign-in logs. You can search your sign-in logs, generate alerts for different things that you may want to see. You can have connectivity into a SIEM solution like a Splunk or Azure Sentinel. You can do that with both Okta and Azure AD. So they both really have all of those similar capabilities.
Hey, I wanted to go back to the Azure AD has multiple options for securing RDP. Sometimes we get these customers where there's maybe a business analyst who wants a SQL server on an Azure virtual machine. And it's not something they want to tie to the rest of their network. It's just something for them so they can crunch data and run reports. And so we go, okay, we can put an Azure virtual machine there for you, but how are you going to connect to it? And we don't recommend connecting RDP over the internet to Azure. So what can you do with Azure AD to secure the RDP access there?
So in that particular scenario, if it's a developer accessing a developer environment hosted in Azure, the best solution there would be what's called Azure Bastion, which basically allows you to do RDP access through a browser, which means that MFA is enforced. The user has to log in with MFA. Your MFA policies are applied. Your conditional access policies are applied. It's logged the same way it would be logged as if they were logging into any other Office 365 application or any other enterprise application. So it's very secure and very easy to set up solution.
Okay, good. So those are the things where they both kind of have similarities, and Okta is almost exactly like Azure AD in most cases. But there are a few things where they are different. One of my favorite things is with Azure AD, you can get rid of your on-premise Active Directory. And you're saying Okta can't do that. Why not?
Right. So Okta really isn't a full replacement for on-premises Active Directory the way Azure AD is. And so Azure AD is very different, fundamentally from your traditional Active Directory, but it has all of the features that a traditional Active Directory does. So you can really make the transition and move completely off of that traditional AD into Azure AD in the cloud. So some things that it can do that Okta can't, you can actually take your Windows devices, your endpoints, and join them directly to Azure AD. So you traditionally have your computer computer, join to AD, which allowed you to sign into that computer with your AD credentials. You can now join that computer to Azure AD and actually sign into Windows itself using your Azure AD credentials. And there's actually no way to sign into Windows using Okta credentials. Windows can't be connected and domain joined to Okta the way it can be to Azure AD. And then the other piece that Azure has is something called Azure AD Domain Services. And what that is, it basically gives you traditional Active Directory domain controller functionality as a service. So you can get things like LDAP and Kerberos and domain join for Windows servers and virtual desktops. So Okta doesn't have any of those features. You can't do LDAP queries against Okta. You can't join a server to Okta. So it doesn't have those features that allow you to really replace Active Directory. Even if you have legacy applications and servers that only work with a traditional Active Directory, there is some way to connect them to Azure AD using Azure AD Domain Services.
And I was thinking about after you get rid of all of your domain controllers on-prem, you're probably going to get rid of the rest of your servers on-prem too. And then if you need to build a server in Azure, once you've gotten rid of your on-prem Active Directory, you can extend with this Azure AD domain services and join the server to the domain like you would if you had on-prem domain controllers.
Yep, exactly. And then it's joined to that domain just as if it was joined to a traditional domain. You can use group policy to manage that server.
Yeah.
You log in with your Azure AD credentials, but you have no domain controllers whatsoever to manage, to patch, to update. It's all a service that's provided to you.
Okay. On this next one, I'm not sure if I'm reading it right. Azure AD Connect can only sync one way from AD to Azure AD?
Right. Yeah. So Azure AD Connect is a one-way sync from your local on-premises AD to Azure AD. So if you use Azure AD Connect, if you have a traditional on-prem Active Directory that you want to keep around, and you want to continue to master your users and your groups in Active Directory, so you create a user in Active Directory and they sync to Azure AD. It does not allow you to go the other way. So you can't create a user in Azure AD and have them sync down to a traditional Active Directory. The Okta AD agent actually can do that. So you can create your users in Okta, manage your users in Okta, and then have them written back to Active Directory. So that is a feature that's available in Okta that's not available in Azure AD. However, it's a scenario that you usually don't need with Azure AD because like we just talked about, Azure AD can be that full replacement for your traditional Active Directory. So if you're really mastering your accounts in Azure AD, you have no need to write them back to your traditional AD because you can then replace all of the other functionality of your traditional AD using Azure AD. So you don't really need that scenario of sending things back.
Yeah. And going along the lines with earlier, we talked about how you can join your workstations to Azure AD. One of the things I like is you can set up Intune, or it's now called Microsoft Endpoint Manager, to automatically enroll your device once it's joined to Azure AD. What are some of the benefits there where Okta can't do?
Right. So yeah. So you brought up Endpoint Manager, which is good, which used to be called Intune, as you know. So it's a full device management solution that Microsoft has natively integrated with Azure AD that allows you to manage Windows devices, Mac devices, Android and iOS. So basically any operating system, any type of device you have in your organization, you can manage with Endpoint Manager. You can push applications, you can enforce settings, you can enforce policies. Okta has no equivalent to that. They used to have a product called Okta Mobility Management, which was a very basic solution for managing mobile devices. They've retired it. It's gone away. So now they have no way to do that. And where this comes into play is it's a really common scenario that we're starting to see more and more, where organizations are saying, we don't want users to have full access to our corporate data from personal devices or devices that are unmanaged or unsecured. We maybe don't want them to have access at all, or maybe want them to have some limited access. So, within your identity provider that's choosing when to allow a user to sign in and when not, the identity provider needs to know if that device, the state of the device, is that device managed? Is it compliant? Is it secure? And so Okta cannot do that. It has no way to know the status of that device without it integrating with some other third party. Where on the Microsoft side, it's all within the same ecosystem. So you have Endpoint Manager and Azure AD that play hand in hand together. So when you sign in, Azure AD can tell if your device is managed by Endpoint Manager, if it's compliant with your Endpoint Manager policies, and then you can have different experiences and restrictions if a user is connecting from a device that isn't registered. One of the newer things that we're starting to do a lot is we're making it so users can sign in to Office 365 from a personal unmanaged device through a browser, and they can access their email, they can access their OneDrive, they can work on documents in the browser, but they can't download anything because Azure AD knows that that's a personal device. We can block downloads to that device and actually keep your organizational files and data within your kind of compliance perimeter and not allow them to be extracted. But if they are on a corporate device that is allowed, they then have that functionality and that ability to download and save things on that device.
I remember seeing something similar that said, if you're not using a corporate device, you can't download and install the Office apps and use those. So you had to enroll your device and make sure it was compliant. Then you could install Outlook and download your mail. Otherwise, you were forced to use the browser-based access because they don't want a copy of your mail sitting on that endpoint if it's unmanaged. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that goes right into the next point I wanted to talk about is that even without Endpoint Manager, even without your computers being managed by Endpoint Manager, what you can do with Azure AD is you can set up rules based on if the computer is joined to your traditional Active Directory environment. So if you're not even using Endpoint Manager, you just have your computers joined to Active Directory, we can actually use that in the policies to have a different experience from your domain joined computers than non-domain joined computers. Okta can't do that. They in order for Okta to be able to tell if your computer is joined to the domain, you have to set up a pretty complex certificate-based authentication deployment to be able to do that. There's a lot of steps and a lot of moving parts in order for Okta to be able to tell if your computers are domain joined. Where with Azure AD, it's really kind of a checkbox you check to say, apply this only if the computer is joined to our domain.
Okay. And now I think we found something that Okta can do that Azure AD can't. Something called workflows.
Yeah, workflows. So Okta has a feature called Workflows, which is their low-code solution for building automation around user provisioning and deprovisioning. So it's kind of wizard and UI driven, where you can set up different things that happen when your user accounts get created or when you terminate users. You can build some automation in there. Azure AD really doesn't have a feature that compares with that exactly. I will say that for the Okta customers that we worked with, I haven't seen anyone actually using that feature yet. So it's certainly not a common one. And there are ways that we can automate things, certainly within Azure AD. We often use Azure Automation for our customers when we're looking to automate onboarding and offboarding processes. That's something we've done actually for a lot of our customers, is build the automation for them. And that's something that can be done with Azure Automation as well as several other tools. So it doesn't work the same as the Okta Workflows feature, but there are ways to do it within Azure AD.
Okay. One of my favorite topics when we're talking to a customer is to tell them they already own Azure AD Premium. And so let's talk a little bit about some of the licensing. You mentioned that a lot of these Azure AD features are free already if you're using Office 365.
Yes, yeah. A lot of these features are actually completely free. They actually don't even require that you're on Office 365. Some of these features work without any licensing whatsoever. They are completely free for anyone to go up and sign up and use. So, some of the things like the SSO, you can actually do unlimited SSO applications for free. There's no licensing required. You can set up multi-factor authentication for free with no licensing. You can integrate with your Active Directory and set up the synchronization with your Active Directory for free. There's no licensing required for that. There are some advanced features within Azure AD that require the Azure AD Premium P1 license. So those are things like conditional access, which is the same as Okta's adaptive authentication, and some other things like that require the Azure AD Premium license. So the thing with the Azure AD Premium is that it is actually included in all of the M365 plans. So anyone that has an M365 plan today of any type has Azure AD Premium included in that plan. So a lot of people already own that. And really the worst case scenario is if you don't have have a plan that includes it and you need to buy it standalone for some reason, the price is $6 a user for Azure AD Premium P1 standalone, which is actually identical to the price for the same features in Okta. So the absolute worst case scenario for purchasing the licensing on the Microsoft side, it's going to cost you exactly what it is in Okta. And in most scenarios, it's actually going to work out to be less.
And a lot of customers that have Microsoft 365 E3 and E5, it comes with. And good news for the smaller customers who are 300 and below, Microsoft 365 Business Premium also has Azure AD Premium P1 in it. So those are the 3 bundles where you can get this included. And most customers don't even realize they have that premium feature in their bundle.
Yep. And also the F1 plan includes it as well. So for the frontline workers,
the first line workers. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so what are some of the things that FinchLoom can do to help our customers to adopt Azure AD over Okta?
Yes, there's a few things we can do. We can certainly help to plan and execute any transition or migration from Okta to Azure AD. If you have apps integrated with Okta and you need help unraveling those, moving them to Azure AD, even if you need help going the other way, if for some reason you've decided to standardize on Okta and you need help moving some of the apps out of Azure AD into Okta, that's something we've actually worked with a couple of our customers to do. So we can help move in either direction. We can also help with the integration between Okta and Azure AD. So if you want to sign into Office 365 using Okta, the common scenario, we can help you set that up. That there's a lot of kind of finer points to that configuration that we can help you work through. And you can actually also do it the other way around. If you want to sign into Okta using your Office 365 credentials, that's possible as well, and we can help you set it up if you want it to go that way. And then, of course, we can provide general guidance and strategy. It doesn't need to be a specific project. A lot of our customers engage with us just to help with the guidance and strategy, to have conversations like this around what products they should be using, so we can help with that overall strategy. And of course, if anyone out there has a complex environment where they have multiple Active Directory forests, or they've grown or shrunk due to M&A activity, or they have complex workflows that they want to try to automate, those are the cases where we can really provide a lot of value and really help out. That those can be can become complex projects, and we have a lot of experience in those areas, and we can help to plan things out and execute things very quickly and efficiently with the experience we have.
So if a business out there acquires another business, and that business is using Okta, but the acquiring company is using Azure AD, is there a way to kind of put them together, or do we have to do a migration?
There's lots of different ways to approach those based on the situation. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. So it really is something we need to kind of look at holistically and plan the best way to approach that for that particular organization. And if the decision is to take the applications out of Okta and move them to Azure AD, that's something we can help do. It usually does start with determining what is going to be the corporate directory for that new combined organization. Is there going to be a centralized directory that includes all of the employees, or are they going to stay in their own separate systems? Most of the time, there does need to be a single consolidated directory, whether that's Azure AD or a traditional AD. So determining what is going to be that consolidated directory, how the two directories are going to be merged into one, and then how all of the different interconnected apps are going to be now connected into that new environment. There's a lot of complexity and a lot of different options and approaches that you can take to get there.
So I guess the big message is, before you decide to go Okta, give us a call.